Venus. So we're going to overlap a little bit with Mercury and see how Mercury and Venus tie together. So last week we were talking about Mercury, and it was a quick Mercury introduction. And we looked at how it is a domicile lord in Gemini, and it is a domicile lord in Virgo. And each of the planets, not the moon and the sun, which are called luminaries, each of the planets rule two different signs, both a masculine and a feminine sign. Each of the planets also have a preference for a sign. So, like Mercury kind of really prefers Gemini, where it can, communicate and be very quick thinking, because that's what Mercury is. It's about communication, it's about language. And it also rules Virgo, which is its feminine counterpart, where it has to be more specific and more detailed. So that's kind of how it works. All right. With Venus, Venus is considered a feminine planet. So Venus works with the moon, whereas Mercury, and this I must clear up for you, Mercury can be a friend to the sun or it can be a friend to the moon, depending on whether it's a morning star or an evening star. A morning star means this: you will see it rise before the sun. So if Mercury is rising before the sun, and I will show you how to also look at and find it in your own chart, the planets move clockwise around the chart. Okay. So if Mercury is ahead of the sun and the sun is here and Mercury's here, then it rose before the sun. Okay. If the sun is here and Mercury's here, then Mercury's behind the sun. That makes Mercury an evening star. When Mercury is an evening star, it's a friend to the moon. When it's a morning star and it rises before the sun, it is a friend to the sun. That is the same with Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn also. So so you will not miss this. I will do this every time we do a planet. The same with Venus. When Venus is going this way in her orbit, so the planets move clockwise, she's moving this way, the Earth is here, Venus is moving this way. If she is ahead of the sun and the sun is here, or she's here and the sun is here because she's moving this way, the sun is here, Venus is here, she's ahead of the sun. That means she is a morning star, and that is her battle goddess form. That's when she's ready to do battle, the morning star. Whereas when she's behind the sun, she's an evening star, and that's when she's more like lovely and beautiful and flirting and wanting to have sex with you, basically. So there's two different Venuses. There's the two different faces of Venus, just like there are the two different faces of Mercury. Venus also is known as Inanna or Ishtar. Inanna is when she's a lovely, beautiful goddess and she has all her jewels and adornments, and she's an evening star. That's Inanna. All right. And she has her crown and she has her high priestess makeup on and she has her throat adorned with jewels and she has her breastplate and her hips have lovely like dresses and rattles and like see it like a belly dancer with her all her shakers on her hips, and then she has rings on her toes and anklets and she's all beautiful. That's Inanna. She's beautiful. Ishtar is after she's gone into the underworld, which means Venus goes retrograde and she goes into the underworld and then she pops up as a morning star ahead of the sun. And this is done through something called a retrograde motion. So then she's Ishtar, and she went down into the underworld to meet her dark sister, Ereshkigal, and she had all the 7 layers. So her crown chakra, her third eye, her throat chakra, her heart chakra, her solar plexus, her second chakra of her hips and her sexuality, and her root chakra of her connection to the earth. All the way down to her feet, all of her adornments are removed, and she is looked at by her dark sister like she is a piece of dirt, this beautiful queen of heaven. And then she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Ereshkigal, that your husband has died and that you're down here crying the funeral lament, but I have to go now. It was really nice to see you." And Ereshkigal looks at her and says, "You are guilty too." And she gives her the evil eye and she hangs Inanna on a meat hook and leaves her for dead to rot into green, rotting flesh. That is the story of Inanna's descent. That is also very much what they have tied the whole crucifixion fiction to. They tied it to that story. They tied it to the story of having to go and die and be dead. And then guess what Venus does? She rises again. So the whole crucifixion story is Venus's story. That's what that is. So then when she rises again, she comes up, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe what happened to me." And she starts like being rowdy like the battle goddess. And I'll read to you something directly from the cuneiform, which is where the Bible came from, the cuneiform, which was written in ancient Sumeria. So I'll read that to you today. But the idea is that Venus is both this and that. She's both love and beauty, and she's a dead thing that rose again, which is necromancy. That's when we're going to get into Jeffrey Dahmer's chart. The other name for Venus, if you study like the Rosicrucians or the Anthroposophists, or in particular Rudolf Steiner, who was a Jehovah's Anunnaki follower. Okay, so the Steiner school has a dogma to it that is Jehovah's. They call her Lucifer. And in their world, Lucifer is an avatar. Lucifer is 3,000 years ago. This entity, just like I told you about Thoth or Thoth, 9,558 BC, 3,000 years ago, Lucifer had an incarnation. And so people don't really understand, but that these are beings. These are beings. They are planetary spheres, and they are also beings that can incarnate. And that's what you are too. So, and people are like, "What? No, I'm just a human." No, in fact, you are not. So if you look at, for instance, like a galactic walk-in is usually part of a different star system. They're literally part of a star or a collective that makes up the soul consciousness of a star or a luminary out there in the multiverse. When you get a galactic walk-in, it's the same as Lucifer or Thoth. They usually exist in their luminous state, and they came into a physical form. And this is where people are like, "What's going on here? What do you mean?" Lucifer was an entity, but he also had a bodily form. Now, the Rosicrucians really identify with Lucifer. The other group that really identifies with Lucifer are the Freemasons or the Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar became the Freemasons. So if you read Albert Pike, and I've read Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, they really revere Lucifer. And they talk about it mostly in the Morning Star form of, rising up out of the grave and then becoming a great battle goddess and so forth. So Venus is Lucifer. People don't realize that Lucifer and Thoth are hermaphroditic. So I'm going to get into that a little bit. Hermes and Aphrodite is hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite. Hermes, which is Mercury, and Lucifer, which is Aphrodite, is hermaphrodite. So now I'm going to get into a little bit about who runs things here. And, just try and hold it together. Some of you know this, some of you don't. But the beings that are hermaphrodites are the beings who are running things here. They are both this and that. So I have worked personally with a relative of the person who is our administrator right now, and he's both. Okay. He is the closest form that his cousin told me that he is like a seahorse. And a male seahorse can be both male and female, and the male seahorse gives birth. So hermaphrodite is the model of those beings, and the whole movement right now of what I'm going to call gender confusion is their movement, folks. And for years, many of you know that all of the Victoria's Secrets models were men. They were all men. All of them are men. So what they do is they put that out there and they confuse the mind of the people who are looking at ladies in their underwear, none of which are ladies. This is also true in Hollywood. And I know I have a lot of clients who are on the inside of this, who know these people personally. Okay, so I can't mention names, but Celine Dion, very tall, very slim hipped, very narrow hips. Celine Dion is a man. So it wasn't just in the picture books that they were playing this with Victoria's Secrets models, but they often do it in Hollywood and music too. And if you start listening to music, old music, and you're out in the public and you hear some music, you'll always hear it. It's like this breeding program. It's all kinds of, he was a she, but hey boy, take a walk on the wild side. What was that? He was a she, but hey boy, take a walk on the wild side. And we've been programmed with this for thousands of years. This whole program here is a trick program. It's a really amazing program. And so for me, I see it as a game. I see it as a fabulous game. And I'm going to show you how to determine your Venus's condition. My Venus is 3 strikes against her. So last week when I was showing you Mercury, Jeffrey Dahmer's Mercury, he has in the same sect as the sun, so that's a plus. It's in Gemini, which is its own sign, so that's a plus. So it's above the ascendant descendant line, which means it's in the same sect as the sun, so it's a friend to the sun. It's in Gemini, and the sign Gemini is masculine. So he had 3 pluses for his Mercury. And that's basically what you want to do. In addition to, is it a morning star or an evening star? Meaning, is it ahead of the sun, or is the sun up here and it's behind the sun? Now, Venus and Mercury can only go so far away from the sun. And then what they do is retrograde, and they have to snap back into orbit, because all of this is electromagnetic levitation. So they appear to go retrograde, but they're not really. It's just an appearance. And then they have to get back close to the sun. So those are the considerations of your Mercury and your Venus. And the reason that I'm using Jeffrey Dahmer, and the only reason I'm using Jeffrey Dahmer, because I'm not very interested in Jeffrey Dahmer. But the point is so that you can see that somebody who has these planets in good condition doesn't mean that they are good. And that's the important thing. And if you have these planets in bad condition, like I have 3 negatives against my Venus, and she's the ruler of my ascendant, you don't think that your client is bad just because they have 3 negatives against their Venus. In fact, it's much more tricky a client who has a beautiful Venus, and I'm going to tell you what those tricks are now, and I can show you Jeffrey Dahmer's chart. But when Venus rules Taurus, which is her preference, Taurus, she tends to get stuff, a lot of stuff. She loves material and she's fixed, feminine, earth. When Venus is in Taurus, she loves jewels, she loves possessions, she loves scents, she loves good food, she likes fabulous makeup, good hairdos, tons of jewelry, whatever. That Venus tends to pile up stuff. So Venus in Taurus tends to pile up stuff. The opposite of Taurus is Scorpio. So when you have Venus in Scorpio, she's not doing well. Okay. She's not necessarily in that good of condition. But then what she does is she piles up sexuality because Scorpio is ruled by the genitals and it's water. So it can be a very intense sexual urges. Now let's look at Venus in her other domicile, which is Libra. Venus in Libra can talk, and please everybody. And she's kind of a flirt and she wants to impress everybody with her artistic skills. And she's kind of like having the moon in Libra, a people pleaser. She's a lovely ballerina and she has great social conversations. So that's in Libra, but she's also a bit of a flirt. And I would say, depending on how she's aspected, it's kind of like Venus and Taurus. Her song is, I am your fire. What's your desire? You know, that one that, yeah, I am your Venus. I am your fire. What's your desire? And so she's like this wish fulfilling tree. That's Venus and Taurus. I want stuff. I want lots of stuff. I want to be beautiful. I want to have painted lips. I want to wear jewelry. Like that's Venus and Taurus. Whereas Venus and Libra, she wants to talk. She wants to be social. She's very social and she's very artistic and expressive because that's an air sign. But she can also be a terrible flirt where she's talking to everyone and then gets herself in trouble. So that's Venus and Libra. The opposite to that is, of course, going to be a detriment in not good condition, which is Venus in Aries. There, she's hot and fiery because Aries is hot and fiery. And it's too fast for Venus because she wants to be slow and luxurious and look pretty and have everybody notice how she looks and then go out to dinner and eat something really yummy and have a lovely conversation. That's Venus. When Venus is in Aries, they just want to get it done fast. So you see how that would be the opposite sign is where Venus is not really happy. There's one more condition I want to tell you about Venus, and that is her retrograde cycle. So I already explained when she's retrograde, she's going down into hell and she's going to be hung on a meat hook for 40 days in the underworld. Now, we started talking about progression last week. If you were born with a Venus that was stationed, you might be incredibly beautiful, very, very beautiful. Like she's standing still. Like last week, Mercury was standing still. Mercury had just come out of the retrograde and was going to move forward. So that was a stationed Mercury. That's an ephemeris type of thing. You have to know where the shaded is and where it's going to go unshaded. That is a stationed Mercury. It can be stationed looking retrograde. Okay, so that's when it's going to do its descent, or it can be stationed when it's going to go direct. Both of those are stations, but here's the difference. When Mercury is looking to do its retrograde, and you're in the ephemeris, you might have a progressed Mercury retrograde, which I described last week of, you know, I had a whole big long period in my life when I was not able to complete my doctoral degree. That was during my Mercury retrograde. But then when my Mercury went direct by progression, Demetra accepted me as a student and I did really well with astrology. I was super fast, very good, confident astrologer. Now with Venus, it's a different type of thing. It's not about your language, your communication, your neural pathways, your ability to read and write and learn like Mercury. That's Mercury's like, whether it's retrograde or direct. Venus is like this. If you have a stationed Mercury looking retrograde, meaning she's about to go retrograde, you might be beautiful, really beautiful. That's at what's called her full saturation. She's so beautiful, but she's gonna spend 40 years in hell. Because if you're born with a Venus retrograde stationed like that, you can be very, very beautiful, but then go into the deepest descent, crying the funeral lament, crying with everyone else. That is a hard Venus. Some people will have a Venus retrograde, and you have to check the ephemeris and see how many years they have left in the Venus retrograde. Maybe they're halfway through the cycle. They're still very beautiful, but only like 15 years of their life is going to be like hell in the underworld. So that's where you really must have an ephemeris. On the other side of that is when people are born with a Venus stationed looking direct, meaning that they will probably never have another retrograde. Venus will not retrograde in their lifetime because our lifetimes have been shortened through various mutations that have been put into us. But Venus will be doing great and she'll have all the money and all the beauty and all the possessions and she's kicking butt, whatever she wants. The Venus is coming up out of the underworld and she's like ready to do business or battle or whatever she needs to do. So those are the conditions of Venus. Venus is a very important planet. That's why the Freemasons, when they're going to do a ritual, they do it in a pentagram. So the geometry of Venus is the five-pointed star of the pentagram. And as I already told you, the Luciferianism is Freemasonry. They worship this third brightest object in our solar system as we know it. So the sun and the moon are luminaries, but the third brightest object is Venus. And so they often call her the shining one. And when Venus appears to you, and some people have had Lucifer actually appear to them and they can channel Lucifer, they're kind of like, whatever it is, it's sacred. Like if it's rape, if it's incest, it's still sex, so it's still sacred. And I know this because Venus has come to me. When I was first studying, I kind of let these planets come through. So Venus is Lucifer, and people don't realize this. So when people get very focused on, people have said the way to restore the divine feminine is your Venus. And I'm going, yeah, not me. That's not the way I'm restoring my divine feminine. And I've used examples, they're only on BitChute, of movie stars that have the perfect geometry in their chart of the Venus star points. So that's the other thing, is Venus makes her star point whenever she does the retrograde and does the conjunction with the sun. So I put up today a picture of her last retrograde, which was in March of this year. And on a certain day, she's the same degree as the sun. That's called combust, or some people call it when Venus kisses the sun. Or people also call it in the heart of the sun. And you might find a chart like that where they have Venus and the sun exactly conjunct. In that case, that person is going to really kind of exude the Venusian qualities. They love sex. They don't really care what kind of sex it is. Venus is about basically, in my opinion, sexual misery and sexual addictions. That's what Venus is about. All right, she's big breeding program Venus. All right. If you have Mercury and Venus together, now I'm going really quick through all the conditions. If you have Mercury and Venus together, you might be born with both genitals. And I have examples of this. About 10% of the population is born with both, and that is hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite. Katie, do you need to ask something, darling?
I just wanted to say, would those 10% be part of the elite? A lot of them?
Yeah,
Air quotes elite.
yeah. So where did that come from? And that is what Katie just put together. The 10% of the population that tends to have this condition of the hermaphrodite condition of being both this and that. And I've also spoken about like the Shavites before. In their culture, the highest level of a tantric Buddhist or a tantric Shavite is that they have both, that they have this and they have that. And I had one of those beings actually literally come to my house when I lived in Vermont. And he was so proud of the fact that his parts down there could menstruate or they could be masculine. So the Shavites, the Nog line, so the Nog is the serpent, the viper line, or the Nephilim line. And yeah, that 10% of the population, unfortunately, usually has something about this and this. And I will tell you, the person who is closest to a seahorse has both this and this in the same sign. All right. So what you're seeing is, the suit of the human, but the parts in there you can often see in the chart with the Venus and the Mercury. So yes, 10% of the population has both. And that's considered very high to them. In the Templar, I'm going to call it religion. I don't consider it philosophy. In the Templar religion, you can watch my video Genuflect and some of the stuff I was doing with Tracy Twyman's work. They actually will do stuff to their body to change, their stuff. The eunuchs are very big in the Templar group. They like to be this and that. And also in the human trafficking situation, they particularly like if they have both this and that. So it's pretty complicated. It goes into my other levels of knowledge, and my ability to understand things that don't appear to everyone else, the unseen realms. But yes, the Venus and the Mercury, that's the situation. Now, Venus has a quality, and I'm going to read you some things about it. She's every year and a half, she does this star point. So this year she did her March 2nd of 2025 to April 12th of 2025. She did her star point at 2 degrees Aries. So what you would do is you would look in your chart and see what is at 2 degree Aries. And then that is going to be the highlight that Venus just highlighted in your chart that you're going to have to work through this entire year. That's what the Venus star point does. If Venus makes points all over your chart, as I've shown with like Madonna, Lady Gaga, a few people like that have the perfect Venus star point geometry lining up exactly on like their ascendant and their moon and their sun or whatever, they become Hollywood stars. So then this is not karma. This is somehow designed this way, because I would not say that Madonna or Lady Gaga are like morally good people. I don't know, but I've heard a lot of things, particularly about Madonna and human trafficking and where she got her children from. And I've listened to some stories right from her mouth where she said, "Oh, her children don't watch TV. TV is for the other people. TV is not for her children." But then the interviewer was like, "Yeah, but you make TV. I mean, you are on MTV, like you make videos, you're on TV." She's like, "Yeah, but that's not for my children. That's for them." So you see, with the hermaphrodites, they're making the broadcasting. They're broadcasting to control everyone else's minds, but they don't let their own children watch TV. So this is what you must know about those people who somehow got selected to go down the tunnel of light and get these amazing Venuses. So they got billions of dollars. They can do whatever they want to their appearance. They always look like something. I'm like, whoa, who are you now? That's Venus showing up with her various, like, oh, I look like this now. Oh, I look like this now. Now I look like this. That's Venus. And people, where do you think this stuff comes from? It's Lucifer. This is Luciferianism. Okay. So every year and a half, she makes the star point. This year, she made it at 2 degrees Aries. Um, when she's stationing and looking into her descent, you can have up to 40 years of absolute hell. So my older daughter has her Venus like that. And she goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the descent. So for all of you out there, you can suddenly have a Venus retrograde by progression when you're like 40 years old. And you're like, why does nothing work out anymore? How come I can't get a job? How come I have skin rashes all over how come my hair is falling out? You know, how come there's no love in my, or, it's not really love. I got to tell you, it's lust. Okay. There's no lust in my life. I'm not getting enough lust. That's Venus has nothing to do with love, folks. It's lust. Okay. But that's because your Venus may have gone retrograde by progression. And you need to look at that because not many people ask me for a progressed chart, but you do your natal chart. You can also do your asteroids, your solar return, which is your yearly, birthday type of chart, the imprint for the year. But the progress chart is, where is your Venus now? Maybe she just went into the underworld and you're going to be crying the funeral lament for the next 40 years of your life. So I got to ask you, why do people think that this thing has anything to do with restoring the divine feminine? I have no idea, because you're going to live in hell for the next 40 years and not have any money. And that's doesn't sound like that's the restoration of divine feminine to me. So the whole idea of 40 days and 40 nights, that's her period of retrograde. Also, the going into the underworld and then resurrecting, passing through the 7 gates. So she has to have all her clothes stripped from her, all her authority stripped from her. And then she's this dead thing that rises. Looking at my notes, that yes, she responds to Taurus, where she is favored for her desires. What do you desire? Now, I want to speak about that before I get into Libra, where Venus is an air sign and it's like flirting, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Those are her 2 songs. All right. So here's the story that I want to tell you. One of my clients, who I've worked with for years and years, said that she sat down in a chair that apparently was a wish fulfilling chair. And when she sat in the chair, she said, I want a really good looking husband who has a lot of money and a big, huge house with a swimming pool. And she had a particular good looking man in mind. So she sat in the chair and she wanted this man. She was just like, I want this man. I want to be a wealthy woman. I want to have a big house. I want to have his kids because he's good looking. She sat in the chair and she made the wish. What's your desire? What's your desire? And then, not too long afterwards, this man started approaching her and she got what she wanted. And this is a client of mine, so I'm telling her tale, but I'm not naming her name. And then she had two kids. She has the big, huge mansion with the swimming pool. She has a maid. The children go to private school. She has beautiful clothes. She drives a fancy car, the whole Venus thing. And then Venus, in her retrograde cycle, says, you are guilty too. And back down into the underworld. And this woman, her man who was providing the paycheck and all the money and the good looks and the dinner parties and the social experiences and the lovely swimming pool and the 2.5 children, was on too many business calls and somehow dialed while he was vigorously having sex with someone else. And my client heard that. Now, the interesting thing about this story is so many clients have told me this same type of story, that no one's going to even know who I'm talking about, because so many women have told me that this is what they desired. They wanted the rich, good looking husband, the 2.5 kids, the big house, blah, blah, blah. And often, as an astrologer, I'm warning you all now, you will start your session like this, because you all have had sessions with me. What do you want to know? Because you're an oracle when you're an astrologer. So you're a shaman, but you're also an astrologer, okay? And they're going to say, well, tell me how to find a beautiful man. I can have hot sex and 2.5 children and a big mansion and a nice car. And I will never want for anything. And I'll be like, honey, you're on the wrong planet. Because what we got here is the breeding program and the sexual misery template. Okay. You do not want those things, because if you get them, Venus is a very interesting entity in our solar system. And I'm going to show you a little book right now, which you don't have to read, but this is a shaman book. This is a shamanic book called Entering the Circle. It was written in 1996 by a Russian psychiatrist. It's pretty holy crap when you find out what is happening in a lot of mental health places. But what she finds out, and what many shamans know, is that it can be like 3 or 5 lifetimes ago that you sat in Venus's chair and asked for the rich husband and the 2.5 kids, and you're still paying for it. Katie's got a lot of things. Katie, you got a lot of things to say about having boundaries while on the circle. Please have boundaries while on. So yes, you've entered the circle. Here's Venus's circle. You're in the circle. But if you are making deals or praying, which I used to write blogs about this because so many of my clients would get into this, I call it entangling with the archons. So if you want those things and you make a deal, these demons, these archons, can plague you for several different lifetimes. Be careful what you wish for, be very careful who you're praying to. When Nish had Alabar Jones on, she read right from, and again, I'm not saying have a session with Alabar. I'm not saying train with Alabar. Alabar is who he is, and I appreciate his psychic skills. But what he did say, and his website says, is that they have found that every mental illness and most physical illness is, in fact, demon possession. And when Nish asked him about it, it was demon possession from like several lifetimes ago, from praying when you enter the when you enter the circle, and then you end up having like problems with your uterus or your ovaries or miscarriages, and you're crying the funeral lament, and that's because Venus is getting her payback. So be very careful when you're setting an intention. Say you're setting an intention for longevity and coherence. Like I'm not into setting intentions for like, a bigger house and a fancier car. I mean, to me that's just dangerous, truly dangerous. If you're setting your intention for longevity and coherence, I can understand that. I mean, I can understand. But don't sit in a chair and say, I want longevity, because you might get what you're asking for. There's a book upstairs that I have that is, and I wrote about it a lot in my blogs, and maybe I'll take a picture for it for all of you this week. And this woman is praying. She doesn't want to get married. She does not want to get married, and she runs off from her wedding and she goes into the forest and she's like passionately praying to not ever have to get married, to just be a free, wild thing that lives forever. I don't want to live the life that my mother did. I don't want to get married. So it's the opposite of that. And Lucifer, which she calls Luke in the book, also gives her what she wants. Oh, and she can't die ever. So it's that thing too. So if you're asking for longevity and coherence, make sure that you are responsible for it. You are responsible for longevity and coherence, meaning you're not eating the wrong thing. You are making sure that your spirit is not compromised. And now I'm going to just look at the chat because I know some people are trying to chat and I actually can't see your chat right now. So I just don't want to mess up the recording. Stacy says that she knows someone who was given a blessed life and manifesting power, and she keeps saying, "Who did you make that contract with?" And then the person just stares at them blankly. Exactly. Make sure you know who you're talking to, folks. Be very careful. We're in a system, before we started recording, and I've said this a few times before, we've bankrupted the whole galaxy at this point with how many demons are in here. And it's not just demons, it's egregores. It's egregores. And I have the doppelganger video talks about your own self-created pain body that are also in here traveling around in the ether, plus tons of dead, unrestful dead humans that would love to possess you. Now that gets back into the video that I made about the tribal shields. Is, people want what they want and they will make a deal with the demonic. So I had talked a lot about when we were doing Mercury, be careful what phonons you're hearing, what like sounds and pitches and AI chat or Alexa, or even when these stupid ads come up. Like I try and make it that there are no ads on my YouTube, but there are unfortunately ads on. Do not turn off the volume immediately when those ads come up, because that is AI stuff. So with Mercury, you're making deals through sound, phonons that can reverse your fire codes. With Venus, it's the same. So it's the sound, it's the phonons, it's also the smell. and the visuals. So I'm going to get into that. So this person is not a person. This AI bot has several hundreds of different channels. That's an AI bot. This particular one is called mspiracy.com, but she also has one called the Killuminati, and the Illuminati put her up. I mean, this thing is basically, this is a bot. This is not male or female. But this person has 8,000 views from 2 days ago. 8,000 views. And what does she look like? Right? She's got this weird, perfect makeup, weird, perfect, like the black lips and the black. This is a bot. Okay. So when you're listening to this stuff, in a way, you are making agreements with, you're getting the phonons. Like, don't listen to that. And also real humans, like there's a guy called Dr. Samuel Lee, who at first I was like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then I realized he's a human, but he's repeating what some AI platform told him. So that's reversing your codes. And then you're basically making a deal with Thoth, Mercury, Hermes. All right. If you're watching these, and I know they're on Instagram, and there's a blonde one too, and she's got like millions of followers. This dark haired one, I just decided to show you. Um, this dark haired one, Killuminati or Emmaspiracy or whatever, these are bots, but they're tying your first and second chakra into these reversals, and they're siphoning your energy off of your body. So that's a very complicated thing. But these planets are related to your chakras and the dimensions. And what I spoke to Nish about on the 2 hour conversation that we had just recently was the reversals run by sound, but also visuals and smells. So when you're watching these bots, be sure that they're pulling loose. All AI is pulling loose off of your body, particularly your first and second chakra, sending it to a digital twin or a clone body of yours that they are trying to then upload to the artificial heaven. So it's extremely complicated, folks. It's gotten far more complicated because AI has got all of these like beautiful, like there's this one on Instagram. She's got like blonde hair and she wears gold dresses. And so those are like the two versions of Venus, right? They're giving you the Ishtar Venus, and she looks like she just came up from the underworld, and she's going to tell you all the conspiracy theories. I think this one is called The Compilation of the Deepest Truth. That is her Ishtar, where she's like, this is a simulation and we're trapped here, and the Illuminati are, but you've got to realize that's not a human. So you're making a deal with Lucifer when you're watching her, and it's pulling energy off of your first and second chakra, which are tied to these planets. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to explain all of this to everyone, but there's a little bit more that I want to talk to you about Venus. So she rules the neck and the face. So again, when you look at these bots, they're all made up with tons of makeup. They're often showing their necks and so forth. So it's the neck and the face, the sense of smell. And what I notice about people that have the reversals is they smell like synthetic fragrances on top of something that's burning and metallic. Like it's a synthetic fragrance smell on top of something that smells like it's burning and metallic. And as soon as I smell those people, I'm like, well, I got to move away. So Venus rules the neck and the face, but the sense of smell, also the organs that are the reproductive organs, the lungs. So when you inhale and you breathe in all the synthetic crap that people are putting on their clothes or whatever, or whatever they're putting on their skin and the makeup and the crap, you're affecting also that part of you that is the first and second chakra. So it's the female reproductive organs, the lungs. The color that she prefers is white, which is why I'm wearing white today. She loves all her precious stones. You know, jewelry is her domain, all the baubles and the bits and the shiny things, Lucifer. Her day of the week is Friday. She brings about beauty and affectionate nature, wealth, and success, but she also can bring about jealous hate, the femme fatale. And the representatives of Venus are often like that. They're very like sexual, but then they've got that femme fatale. Just think Madonna. I mean, it's like Madonna is so exactly that. And she's got all the Venus star points. So why don't we, yeah, it seems like a lot of people want to talk about stuff, but remember, folks, there's certain things you cannot say about. All right. Be careful what you say, or I won't be able to put the video up. So let's have people talk. Katie, what did you want to say?
You were talking about like the throat, and earlier when I was speaking with you, I was just saying like how like my throat felt like super activated like after that, and then like even that day it was all like, be sure you can just stand in your truth, stand up for yourself. Don't, when someone's coming at you, let them do that sometimes. So I think that might have also been why I was like able to speak the way I did.
Yeah. So before we got on the call, Katie had watched the video I did about the tribal shields, and she was explaining a bizarre situation where something happened that felt like someone was kind of stalking her, was a bit of a pervert, got right behind her in line. She put down the boundary from her groceries to his, and then he took it and smacked it down like in a state of violence. And then Katie had to defend herself and stand up for herself. But I'm going to add to what Katie just told us about the throat chakra is the throat chakra and the genitals are connected. So the second and the fifth chakras are connected. Your cervix looks exactly like your throat. So if you look at a cervix and you look at the larynx of the throat, like down into your throat, they're basically you will not tell the difference between your cervix and your larynx. Like they look exactly the same. So when someone is sexually predating on you like that, you will start to feel the entity. Like I can feel this stuff. Like once when I was walking in Hawaii, there was a sexual predator on the street, and I could feel the entity would come right towards my second chakra. And what I will do is I will do a hand vortex clearing. Like, no, that thing's not allowed to come near me. Okay, you can also activate your star Merkaba, but no, clearing, reverse vortex clearing, no. But then once you feel that entity try and get in your second chakra, your throat sometimes will be constricted, like you need to say something, like scream or something like that, or yell at them, or, say you're a fucking pervert. Like, what the hell are you doing right now? Or whatever you need to do to establish your boundary. Sometimes your throat will work and sometimes it will not. It depends on how tight and lifted your female reproductive body went. If your female reproductive body went into like clamping down, sometimes your throat will clamp down. In that case, and this is where stuff goes on, folks. So you have to slow down, relax, slow down your breath, relax, calm, ground yourself, feel your feet on the earth, reverse hand vortex, get away from me. And you can say that, get away from me, and use the word reverse hand vortex. And whatever your voice needs to do. Some people find that they can't scream, they can't raise their voice, They cannot exert their authority, and that's because the second chakra and the fifth chakra go together. The second chakra is Venus. She's definitely, this energy is of Venus in the second chakra, which rules the female reproductive organs. So, those are some of the things that you want to look at in your chart too. If your Venus is not in good condition, like I'll show you my Venus so you can understand how to do whether she's got, pluses or negatives. Is the Demetra taught, first of all, pluses and negatives. And then in her book, um, her ancient astrology, she made it A's, B's, and C's because people thought pluses and negatives were too like bad or good. So I'm like, Demetra, I can't even believe the political correctness that has got to go on out there. It is just ridiculous. Like, let's just do astrology, right? But when she taught me, okay, you get a negative for that, a negative for that, a negative for that. So my Venus is not in good condition. I have three negatives against my Venus, and yet she's the ruler of my ascendant. And still, why is it that I can drive a comfortable car and live in a nice house and buy a white shirt? It's because I have never entangled with the things of this world that tells you you need a rich husband who's got a CEO job and I got to wear all the lipstick and get Botox in my lips or whatever. I have no idea. I can't even understand what people are up to out there. But if you don't entangle with these things of Venus, of luxury goods, I'm not against like a warm blanket and a nice shirt. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about so many material resources that you're Ivanka Trump. I mean, if and whatever Ivanka Trump was, I think it was a man. I got to tell you. And that's why my social credit score is not very good. Which is what we were talking about before this we started recording this call. Okay. So let me just show you some chart examples so you know what the heck I'm talking about with the negatives and the pluses. Okay. So I'm going to do the best that I can, but I have to look at it too. My Venus is the ruler of my ascendant, and we're going to make a comparison between my chart and Jeffrey Dahmer's chart. So I have a Libra ascendant. Jeffrey Dahmer has a Libra ascendant. We're both very, and Jeffrey Dahmer is allegedly dead now, but I got to tell you some other weird stuff about that. I have a Libra ascendant, but the ruler of my ascendant, which is down here at 7 degrees, 13 minutes Sagittarius. She's ahead of the sun. The sun is here. Venus is here. So Venus is a morning star because she's going to rise above the ascendant before the sun. The sun is behind her. So she gets a negative for that. She's a morning star. She's rising before the sun. Now, I have a night chart because I was born at 3:28 a.m. So she's also in the same sect as the sun. She's in the same hemisphere as the sun. But I have a night chart, which means that she's not supposed to be in the same sect, but it's nearly impossible because Venus only moves so many degrees away from the sun. So virtually all of us have one strike against us with our Venus. So that's the sexual misery template that happens here. Nobody gets a good love life. I told a woman that I just had this week, she's like, oh, but you have Claude, you have Claude. And Claude's upstairs and he's listening right now. And Claude's comment was, there are no Prince Charmings. Forget it, folks. You think Claude and I live some perfect freaking life. I am telling you, Claude will tell you, there are no Prince Charmings. You have to be just two souls that realize what's going on here, okay? And if you're going to cohabitate, you do it without all these weird delusions. My Venus is ahead of the sun. She's in the same sect as the sun, and she's in a masculine sign, Sagittarius, which is very truthful. And so Venus does not like this position at all. I have 3 strikes against my Venus. And therefore, I am not going to just manipulate people with my sexuality. Now, it's true that some people will get on my videos and say, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're pretty. All right, that's true. That will happen. But that's not my thing. I am not trying to be whatever this bot is and look like something that I'm not. I don't put on makeup. I don't put on, I mean, I'm putting on jewelry to make a point of these videos, but I don't try and pretend I'm something that I'm not. So Venus is a bit of a pretense. She's a little bit of a flirt. And then if you really go into those and entangle with that kind of behavior, she's Lucifer. She's going to want payback. All right. So let's look at how Jeffrey Dahmer had to do his payback. Let's look at Jeffrey's chart now. Jeffrey also has a Libra ascendant. Venus is a domicile lord. Venus is not in Sagittarius, like mine, which is a masculine sign. Venus is in Taurus, where she's got all her power, all her strength, all her beauty, and she wants all her possessions. She wants something good to eat, some yummy smells, some good sex. Venus and Taurus, all right? She's ahead of the sun. So, I mean, she's always going to have 1 strike against her because she's in the same sect as the sun. But she has the strength of being in a feminine sign and a domicile lord. But yes, she has 1 strike. So he gets 2 pluses where I have 3 negatives. He only has 1 negative. So now let's look at Venus when she has all her benefits. All right. Jeffrey Dahmer, Libra ascendant. So she's the steersman of the ship of his life. Just like my Venus, I have a Libra ascendant, but she's in Sagittarius with 3 marks against her. So he can bring about, because she's in her own sign, in a feminine sign, and she's direct. So she's bringing about conditions that she wants with material substances, sensual material substances. So Venus is in the 8th house, whereas for me, Venus is in the 3rd house. What she wants to bring about in the 8th house is death. Whereas my Venus is in the 3rd house. What she wants to bring about is communication, study, learning, seasonal activities, the house of the goddess. So you can see my Venus brings about those conditions. If you meet somebody with a strong Venus as a domicile lord in the 8th house, consider whether you really want to go out with them. And that's why I think all relationships and even all jobs, like you should have your chart read. In Japan, you do not get a job without having your chart read. So this, in some cultures like India, and I want to thank all the very generous people from India that are sending donations, because in India, people know the value of astrology. And so I have more donations coming in from India than anywhere else in the world, folks. And they just send me $30 or $50 on PayPal. I'm astounded, because you know what, how the dollar compared to the rupee or whatever, the denomination is in India. I mean, they're sending me 30 to $50. That's like a month's rent there, folks. So in India, you don't get married without astrology, because you might you might you might marry Jeffrey Dahmer. People. Okay. So you want to check and see. The other thing about his Venus is not only is it a domicile lord, but it's moving at speed, it's direct, it's in a feminine sign, but Nessus is with it. Nessus. So Nessus is about rape, murder, and blood poisoning. And Jeffrey got what he wanted. I don't know how many people he raped. I mean, but they apparently know how many people he murdered and how many people he ate because he kept their body parts in the freezer. But this is an example of Venus in good condition. And that's why I say, I think we're in a bad neighborhood. I think that this solar system is not particularly a good neighborhood to be in. So there's Venus. So when you're looking at your Venus, is she in a masculine or a feminine sign? Is she in a domicile lord? Is she direct or is she retrograde? And then also, is she having a geometric aspect with a negative planet? So when we look at Donald Trump's chart, which we're going to do right now, my friend Donald, Venus, I've already done Donald, but it's on BitChute. Venus is in Cancer, a feminine sign. Venus is behind the sun. So this is behind the sun because the sun is here. So it's behind the sun. So she's an evening star where she likes to have a good evening on the town in a few different clubs in New York City that I've already talked about on my BitChute channel, with RFK there also having a night on the town. And Venus is conjunct Saturn. This is the old man and the little girl. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? All right. Oh, but there's no list. Okay. Now we're going to look at the Venus star point, and then I'm going to open it up. All right. This is difficult, but this one I did. And don't worry, there's some notes on the bottom. All right. Don't worry about the notes. To do your Venus star point and to find out whether it's prominent in your chart, I put this particular chart in the group astrology page on Facebook, but everyone can look at it now. And basically, what you do is you go, where's my first point? My first point is the first Venus retrograde after you were born. And that will be a degree mark. Like I told you this year, the Venus star point was at 2 degrees Aries. But in this person, which was born 1981, you start the first Venus star point here of the Venus conjunct the sun during her retrograde. And then you go to the second one. And then you go to the third one. And then you go to the fourth Venus star point since the time you were born. And then you go to the fifth one, and that gets you the pentagram. And you literally draw it just like that. You put a little marker there, a little marker there, a little marker there, a little marker there, and a little marker there. Now, for this person, the first Venus star point happens to hit her vertex in the house of children. So this is literally the person that I was talking about that asked for children from Venus for 2.5 kids to marry a rich, good-looking guy and have good-looking kids and live in a big fancy house. And then Venus is going to make her pay. All right, Venus is going to make her pay, and she's paying. When it was born, her Venus was also behind the sun, so it's an evening star. So she has a predisposition to want to have romance and, be loved and be beautiful and not have her hair falling out with, bad parasites. But the Venus has to pay because it gave her what she wanted. So then she's got to pay. So when you have a Venus star point that works perfectly, this is the Viper Queen Gaga. When your Venus works perfectly, and here's Gaga, on the ascendant, on the moon, on the sun, ascendant, moon, sun, and then up here is the eighth house that nobody knows about, death. All right. So her Venus star points hit the ascendant degree, which is the most vital point in the chart. Then it hits her moon, which is a luminary. Then it hits her sun. And then there's this hidden Venus down up here that is the eighth house. So that's where she gets into some of that other stuff. And then the Venus star point at Nessus. At Nessus, rape, murder, blood poisoning. I'm not making any accusals at all. I am simply showing a chart. And the Viper Queen, Gaga, identifies as both male and female. So I've already done a video on this, but she's the perfect example of where Venus can take you. If you have the Venus star point on your ascendant, your sun, your moon, your Nessus, and the eighth house, you're going to get pretty high up there in the world of the elites. And that's what I call the bottom feeders. All right. So that was a lot on Venus. And there is the progressed Venus. Yes. So Sandy is now talking about the progressed Venus. And you will have a progressed Venus too. So let's just talk about the seventh house for a moment before we get into anyone's particulars, reactions, comments, clarifications, or whatever anyone wants to work on. The seventh house is considered the opposite of you. So in Western or modern astrology, they consider it like your marriage partner. But in ancient astrology, if you look at Demetra George's book, which I suggest that you get, I mean, these are far more difficult than her Astrology for Self, but this one, the volume 2 particularly, is really powerful in terms of what do the houses mean. So the seventh house is like where the sun sets. It's literally the opposite of you. So in modern astrology, people think of it as your spouse, your business partner, your client, the other person. But in ancient astrology, I'm reading from page 731 right now, it is also open enemies, enemies and your opponents, lawsuits, criminal trials, thief and robbery, because it's about the other person. All right. So if you look at Dahmer's chart, his Venus is in the eighth house. But again, look at his Mars and his moon, which we will get to Mars next week. His Mars is the domicile lord. His Venus is the domicile lord. His Mercury is the domicile lord. His Saturn's the domicile lord. But his moon, when your luminary is in the seventh house, you want to be careful that you do not get into lawsuits. So, Sandy, for you, do you remember? This is personal between Sandy and I because she's my neighbor. But do you remember January of this year? And I was a little bit hesitant about, you know, conducting any further business with the employer. And that's all I can say about that.
Yes.
Okay. Because the seventh house doesn't mean, that if you go to a criminal trial or some court hearing because you were falsely accused of something, or whatever happened, lost your job because of something that was not your fault or whatever, when you have planets in the seventh house, this often can be like court cases and criminal charges. And depending on what is there and the condition of it, it can be very alluring. Like, You might get a lawyer who says, I'm going to settle this. You're going to get $1 million lawsuit. And I'm not saying Sandy was doing any of this. I'm just trying to give examples. But when you have planets in the seventh house, you got to be careful all the time of lawsuits, false accusations. Anything could happen. So even in the progress chart, say in your natal chart, there's nothing like that. But then you get a solar return, you've got a big stellium in the seventh house. Be careful. You do not want to end up in court, because everything that I understand about court at this point, it's fairly draconian. It's set up for the draconians to get a big loosh feed. And there's a huge amount of entities that live in courthouses and other places that get that loosh feed with you, from you. With Jeffrey Dahmer, I mean, can you imagine how many entities in all the different bars and social situations that he was involved in? He gave people drinks, was a sweet talker, was very social, would give them a drink with something in it, and then drag them back home. But he got his way with what he wanted, because he said literally he loved them so much that he had to eat their heart first. That's the nature of Venus. That really is. All right. I'm going to read a little bit from the Sumerian text, but I want to find out, does anyone else want to comment right now?
I just noticed like the shapes of the charts, and like how the ones that were in favor like seem to have like be inverted. And then there's like a square on Dahmer's, and a weird triangle onto the left, on the right. So I was wondering if that might correlate with certain interests. Just noticed that.
Absolutely. So the geometries, which, in order to really explain geometries and not be overly generalizing, like Jeffrey definitely, if I just get my red marker, Jeffrey has some pretty intense squares in his chart. So you're right, Katie. He's got a what's called a T square. I'm going to draw it in really dark right now, to his sun. So he has a very tight T square. And here at the tip of his T square is the asteroid Lucifer. Lucifer is right there at the very top, sitting between his sun and his Mercury. And if you have asteroid Lucifer, everyone's got asteroid Lucifer somewhere, because everyone has all 44,000 asteroids. Everyone does. But it's only significant like this when it's within a 2-degree orb. All right. So he has Lucifer, and in the ninth house, Lucifer, to Jeffrey Dahmer, because he's a Nephilim, is God. Lucifer's God to this guy. So Venus is Lucifer. So when he is praying, that he wants to have sex with some young hitchhiker that he saw on the side of the road, he'll get what he wants, because he's literally praying to Lucifer, and Venus is a domicile lord in his chart. The other big square that he has, and he has what is called the pressure cooker, from his ascendant to his midheaven and descendant. And when we get to Saturn, and I didn't draw it so well because I was kind of moving fast, but he has this big square in his chart with Saturn down here on the IC conjunct Vesta. Saturn is a domicile lord. This guy is considered a high priest for this particular system environment. And that's why in the eighth house video, which is in the comments from the last Mercury video, Jill from New Zealand, who's an astrologer, put that one up there too. So the eighth house video explained, I mean, this guy is considered an avatar, and that some of my clients that are in mental institutions, so I do clients with people who are literally in a psychiatric center. as I'm speaking to them. And one of them, who I talked about in that video, said that Jeffrey Dahmer was her spirit guide and that he came to her at night and he spoke to her so clearly that she had to Google and find out if he was actually dead. She thought he was in her room. He is literally like an avatar entity here. This guy is a bizarre thing. And more than one person has told me that he comes to them. This guy is a freaking high priest ascended entity. So when you look at his chart, and people say that they dream of me too. So I'm not saying that clients don't say, "Oh, Lalita, I had a dream of you last night." People do. But look at the geometry. Look at my chart's geometry. That's a star Merkaba. So the geometry does matter. It really does. But when you go to Gaga's geometry, she's got the pentagram. Like, holy crap, does she have the pentagram? Like the perfect pentagram. So she works with the Hermaphrodite. This whole thing of Hermes and Aphrodite. She can sing, Hermes and Venus. She can look like something. I don't know. She's looking like a lot of things, in my opinion, but that's part of that hermaphrodite thing. All right. Yes, thank you, Joya. My geometry, even though I do not have any planets in good condition, they are considered in poor condition, all of them, which is different than a word like a detriment and a fall. Detriment and a fall is planetary condition by sign. But when you say good condition or poor condition, you're actually referring to how many pluses or minuses you have for that particular planet. So yes, my Mercury is in poor condition because it's bound by the moon. It's at the same degree. That's called bound. It's in Capricorn where it has to be super responsible. But Jeffrey Dahmer's is in Gemini where he can talk about anything to anybody and then get them to come home with him. It's freaking scary. But that's also based on, other things in his chart that are geometries. Now, I wanted to sing to you. I guess that in the old world, we used to sing and do poetry, and the cuneiform is kind of a poem, but I'm not going to actually sing it to you. But I want to read to you. There are over 100 different cuneiform chapters, let's call them chapters, that are supposed to be in the Bible. The first one, Greg Braden is reporting on these first chapters of the Bible, which are all cuneiform Sumerian tablets. And it talks about the war in the heaven, and it talks about the dark ones descending and taking the women of earth. The dark ones, as far as I know, were like Lucifer. They were all hermaphrodites. And I know this is going to be like, holy crap, Lolita, what are you talking about? But as far as I understand from the archaeological record, 10,000 years ago, the only bodies here were female. They were all female. The Y chromosome is literally a genetic mutation from the fallen angelics. All right, because they were all hermaphroditic. And so that's what's going on here. And as the Y chromosome is disappearing right now, and I've already put all the details about that in Women, the Original Power video. Just read the description. This is absolutely fact. There will be no Y chromosomes within about 10 years. There will be none. All right. But when Venus was written about in the original tablets, and you can look up a book called Descent to the Goddess by writer Pereira, P-E-R-E-R-A. So this is directly from the cuneiform about the goddess of war. The battle is the dance for Inanna and giving victory. She is a battle goddess. She is the quiver ready at hand. She is the heart of the battle, the arm of the warriors. More passionate than Athena, she is the all devouring. In power, she is attacking like a storm. Having an awesome face and an angry heart, she stings with abandoned delight of her own glory and prowess. Having heaven as mine, earth is mine, a warrior am I. Is there any god who can vie me? The gods are all sparrows, and I am a falcon. The Anunnaki trundle along, and I am a splendid wild cow. So that is literally what the Bible used to say. They've taken out Ishtar, Inanna, Aisha. Let me think, there's a few other ones. There are a whole bunch of feminine deities were in the Bible to begin with. Asherah was another one. They were all in the Bible. Inanna was in the Bible because what the Bible was the story of the invasion. And then what it came out is the genesis of Eve being this cloned item to provide a lesser wife for Adam. So this is also goes way back into who is Venus? How did she get here? What is this thing in the sky? What is it? And I said it's a wanderer, also known as a watcher. And I had an experience and a conversation of when the watchers fell, they were these shimmering, beautiful, luminous beings, and they decided that they wanted the women of Earth. They saw the women of Earth, and so they literally fell from the heavens and came into material matter. And I believe our solar system is the fallen angels. They are called the Watchers, or in Hellenistic astrology, they're called the Wanderers. They move around, and I'm not sure that they're supposed to be here. That's the other weird thing. If you read Worlds in Collision, which is a book that I've already covered, they know that Venus was a comet and she literally scorched the earth twice over and caused massive destruction. So she really is literally the battle goddess. She's more of a comet. The other thing that I understand is that she has no magnetosphere, so she's literally dead. This is a dead planet. So it's an unresolved dead consciousness that is what? Parasitically living through our experience. And wherever it is in the chart, that's where she's kind of using you, right? So someone said to me, oh, Lalita, with your knowledge and all the books you've read and blah, 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 why don't you just put up an asteroid program on your own server? Why don't you just blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, darling, do you not know that my website has already been taken down? All my videos on Vimeo, like I already did this. And that's my Venus in very, very poor condition. I don't get to be Lady Gaga. And I'm so relieved. so, so I think, Mary Ellen, did you want to say something too? Yeah, because some people here have what we would perceive as great lives. Great, fabulous, but they'll pay. Like Jeffrey Dahmer. They're, who knows what they're up to, but ugh. All right, who wants to speak now? Some people are typing, some people are unmuting. Who wants to say something? Stacy.
So years ago, I found this book, and I've been trying to look for it. Like it's been a long time. My books have been in boxes, and I have lost some on the way and stuff. But I think I still have it, but I got to figure out. So I can't remember the name or the author, but he was an archaeologist who was studying the Mount of Tara in Ireland, and he said he was in there working one day, and well, and during the solstice, and everybody was there for the solstice, all the other archaeologists to witness it, and a bunch of other people. And he said then the sun rose and shined off the wall and down the corridor, and everybody was like in awe. And then he said, I think, was it an hour later, or anyway, I think an hour or two later, Venus rose in the Mount of Tara. And he said that was the first experience. And he said that when Venus rose in the Mount of Tara, it lit up the whole um, chamber. Like he said, it was like daylight. It was way more than the sun did. And so then he started digging into it, and he discovered that there was a direct connection to the 8 cycles, like the 8-year cycle of Venus. So when that was the 8th cycle when she rose at that exact same spot. And whereas the rest of the years she would be off and she wouldn't light up that quarter. And he realized that the kingship in the ancient Celts, they were only allowed to rule for 8 years, and then they would kill them, right? Your rulership was only 8 years long, and then they would sacrifice them. Then he realized that the May Day festival happened exactly in time with the solstice. So then he realized that what they were doing was, in the May Day celebration, they were creating kings with a ceremony. The woman would carry that child, and if she was birthing at that exact same moment when Venus rose, that was the kingship of that child was automatic, and they would be raised as a king and sovereign to be sacrificed at the end of a cycle. So they were basically breeding, raising kings, and sacrificing them through Venus.
Exactly, Stacy. I'm so grateful for your insight and your experience. So let me just cover this one real quick with the 5-8-13 cycle and the mounds. So if you go to Newgrange in Ireland, it's a Venus temple. They're all Venus temples. And the Venus cycle is the ritual sacrifice cycle. And just exactly as we're hearing from Stacy, that is how the kings were created, was that it was based on Venus, because you could not bring wealth and beauty and all these material type goods to the kingdom unless you were born with a very particular Venus. So that's right. The Freemasons, the Templars, were very interested in the Venus cycles, and still today. Yeah, there are a lot of different books on archaeoastrology and Stacy can't remember the name of the book right now, but the one that I know is Stars, Stones, and Scholars. Stars, Stones, and Scholars shows you the archaeology of also how these mounds all match constellations that are in the sky. So I've spoken a little bit about Andromeda, the princess being stolen, and all that kind of stuff. Those are in Clavacairn in Scotland. That alignment is there. So Stars, Stones, and Scholars, yes, is definitely a book that, if you want to get into the archaeoastrology of this and how kingship and lineages were done, they would force a woman to have sex at a certain time to create a monarch, like a person that, and if you listen to the Nephilim families, like Nathan Reynolds is one of the Nephilim families that is talking a lot about their sex rituals. It is unbelievable. And it all has to do with Venus. They all do it according to Venus. Mm-hmm. And the ritual sacrifice. So in the Trump family, the oldest son was sacrificed. So the oldest son was named Freddie, and his daughter wrote a book about basically his abuse and death. they have to do a sacrifice also because Venus is associated with blood sacrifice. I hate to tell you all this, but there are astrologers out there who go on and on and on about this is how we restore the divine feminine. Folks, I can't believe the level of incompetence out there. But again, most astrology is done by bots, and people don't even know that's a bot. But I used to point these people out all the time and going, they don't even have the moon phase correct. This is not an astrologer. This is a bot. And there's one of them called Alex Miles. I pointed out this Alex Miles. Alex Miles. What? Okay, Miles? Miles? What is this person? No personal content, no personal pictures, no personal anything. Just giving mass astrology posts to millions of people, none of which was correct. So when you're studying astrology, please be careful about online sources. Okay.
Well, he was saying like the ceremony was like the birth and the sacrifice would happen in the chamber simultaneously at the exact same time that Venus would rise,
That's
is what he
Tracy.
figured out.
That's
Like,
Tracy Twyman stuff too. That Tracy Twyman and genuflect, which I already covered, genuflect, they call down Venus. They literally do a ritual, and somebody has to embody Venus. So they call her into their body, and they do sex and murder at the same time, folks. This is what they do. The pentagram, and they do it on a pentagram with the light of Venus coming through. This is exactly what they do. Yes. Okay, just go ahead and say, I don't know what word you're saying, honey. Is that a word that's okay? I can't hear you, Katie. I think you're right. You're writing narcophilia. Necrophilia. Yeah. So Jeffrey Dahmer was a necrophiliac. So it's cannibalism. It's all of that kind of stuff. All done on the Venus cycles. This is the Freemasons template, Lucifer.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah. And that's like so much of this underworld.
And they do it on astrology. I mean, it's all based on astrology. That's why if you're a good astrologer, you can figure out when they're going to do this junk too. Like I was very concerned about March this year when Venus did her retrograde. There was huge interdimensional battle this past March. So anybody else, there were some questions. The Venus and Taurus in the ninth house, well, that also has to do with the kind of like this, what we're talking about, the love of sensual things. But the ninth house is a little bit better because at least it can go into metaphysical studies, whereas Venus in the eighth house is just people eating people. And I don't mean to make terrible generalizations, but with Jeffrey Dahmer, his Venus was not just in the eighth house, it was conjunct Nessus. So it was more than that. So I'm just always worried about making generalizations because people will be out there looking at their chart going, oh my gosh, am I going to eat somebody? You know, like, oh, please don't do that. You got to have like several different things, including personal asteroids and all kinds of stuff. So, okay, so some people, the influence of Venus is about 7 degrees. So her influence is 7-degree orb, and the sun's influence is a 15-degree orb. The moon's influence is a 13-degree orb. But what Stacey was talking about with 5, 8, and 13 is 5, 8, and 13 is the mathematical movements of the earth, the sun, and Venus. So 5, 8, 13 is literally the geometry that the sun, the earth, and Venus make. in the star points. So 5, 8, 13 is very important. And that's what Stacy knows about too. That 8 being the infinity symbol, right? That one is considered very important. You'll also see a lot of bizarre stuff go down on like Friday the 13th, because Friday is Freya's day or Venus's day. But in terms of Venus's influence in the chart, you know, I don't know what else to tell you. Jeffrey Dahmer's Venus is within 2 degrees of Nessus. So that's extremely influenced by Nessus. All right. He was a rapist and a murderer. Any other things? I feel like such a heavy astrologer. I mean, but I got to tell you, I can't just do love and light, folks. I am a shaman astrologer. And let's define a little bit what a shaman is, okay? So the shaman is not a love and light new ager. It is somebody who works deeply with spirit, deeply with nature, deeply with land, and has their spirit as a primary connection to all things. There are 3 kind of generalizations about types of shamans. One is a seer who can see things. Another is a medicine shaman, someone who can heal, also knows plant medicine, and so forth. And then there's a shaman that is a combination of those things, that is more of like shaking, quaking, able to make the spirit rise so fast that like spirit is heavy in the lodge. Like if you have a really qualified shaman, their shaking medicine, like when they're in the lodge or when they're smoking a pipe or playing the drum, just their vibration can heal everybody. So there's different kinds of shamans, but the kind of shaman astrology that we're doing is we got to get to the truth. I mean, to me, a lot of the shamanism is about getting to the truth and not bypassing, and also not being indoctrinated by religious dogmas and everything. Shamanism is very connected to spirit and truth and divinity. I think that's what a shaman really is. Stacy, do you want to talk about what do you find in a shaman?
Well, the ones that I know, um, they don't sugarcoat a lot of things. A lot of people are pissed off at them most of the time and don't understand what they're saying, and so they're being given the truth, but nobody wants to hear it, of course. And so like that's why New Age is so popular, because everybody can like, basically masturbate each other with like, oops, sorry, with all their like, oh, you're so wonderful crap, and nobody learns anything.
There you go. Okay. The shaman speaks the truth. All right. And they're not going to sugarcoat things to make it nice. Some of what Stacy was talking about was also reminding me when we did the bog group of like the weird ritual sacrifices and stuff that went on. There was one Irish man that was like a beautiful tall man, and they cut off both of his nipples, and they did like a major ritual sacrifice. And I bet you anything, they had astrologers too that were trying to determine what day his blood sacrifice was going to happen. Weird crap has gone on in here, folks. So
So,
go ahead, Katie, you want to talk?
yeah, I just wanted to add to that, like, because I'm questioning if it's like that, like these elite bloodlines, like that's how they gain energy through these forces, right? They use them for wrong. So
They
it's like,
use for wrong. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like we gotta figure out how to take control of these energies for our use for good. But then also it's like we don't necessarily want to be using them at all. We want them to just leave us alone. That's where I'm at,
Yeah. Yeah.
or at least
Well,
nowhere in our chart where they favor how we can be aware of them.
yeah. So when I did the chart for the retreat, Venus is in Libra at that time, but the asteroids and the location of Venus is not in bad condition. So you can use it to your advantage. You can use it in a good way that is truly helpful to people. Say you want to do an event where you want to make sure everyone gets along and there's good social relationships and people can talk to each other freely, then you use it that way. But if you're using it the wrong way, like they do, and doing ritual blood sacrifices and stuff like that, their their aspect, like Venus is this or that, just like Mercury can go this way or that way. Like these planets are very dualistic. So they can bring about like good harmonious relationships, or they can, I mean, I think that's why they're considered watchers. They are fallen beings that can be influenced through blood sacrifices and other things to give more power to the other groups. So, as an astrologer, if your chart has some difficult conditions, you figure out how to uplift it. You figure out how to be more ethical. There was one doctor that was released this week, and I can't say all the words about this, okay, folks, but there was one doctor who gave the salt water, all right, instead of the, and he was a man from Utah, and he was faced, I think, 34 years in prison. And just like other people have been released, they sometimes have to release these people because they did so wrong in penalizing them and trying to put them in prison. So there is some level of grace that can happen. And this week we did have a Jupiter Venus conjunction when this fellow was released. And a lot of people celebrated and were really happy. He protected thousands of people by giving the salt water. Katie, I got to hear you though, hon. I think you're still muted. Something's going on.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, my headphones probably been watched one too many times. But he saved so many people. I mean, who knows how many people are no longer, are not, don't have so many things going on that they could have had. So that kind of, energy pushes him out of whatever punishment they were going to give him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this world is more than what their games are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do right. Choose to do right, people. Choose to be.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
I sundanced with Schindler's grandson.
Who was that, hon?
Schindler saved thousands and thousands of Jewish people during the war.
Oh, okay.
He was a businessman, a German businessman who saw what was going on, and he ran. Well, they gave him a bunch of Jewish prisoners to work in his business, and he saw what was going on, and he felt bad for them, so he set it up so that he could rescue them through his business.
Yeah.
And when the war was over, he won a bunch of awards and stuff.
Yeah.
And he cried, saying he didn't do enough.
Yeah. This guy's crying too. In the interview when they finally released him, he was like, I just see him crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people shared this. He faced 35 years in prison for giving the salt water rather than the other thing, but he did right. So when the next stuff is coming, and stuff is coming, folks, weird stuff is coming, do right. Do right. He was a good doctor. So, I mean, there are good doctors out there. I mean, they might be in prison. There's others, there's a bunch of them still in prison. Robert Young is still in prison. Yeah. Anyone else want to speak? I mean, I don't really feel like playing games with Venus because you can get the idea. If she's in Scorpio, she can do sex addict stuff, you get the idea, right? Venus in different locations. Whereas in Virgo, she tends to be more like practical and clean and hygienic, and that's good. If you have Venus in Virgo, Good. Oh, and we'll stop the recording. We got questions for after. Okay, so we'll just stop the recording. Thank you everyone so much for being part of our video and listening to our group. And I'll say bye-bye and stop the recording for now.